My name is Rebecca. I just turned 29 and my life was perfect until my birthday party last month. I had a great marketing career, a beautiful apartment in Chicago, and a handsome fiancé named Jason. We had been together for 3 years, and I was pregnant with our first child. I planned to announce my pregnancy during my birthday celebration. Instead, Jason handed me a gift box in front of everyone. Inside was a note that read, "I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better." I just smiled as he walked away, because he didn't know what I was capable of. Where are you watching from? Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to know how I turned my life around after his betrayal. I met Jason at a company holiday party 4 years ago. I was working as a marketing executive at Crawford and Mitchell, one of the most prestigious firms in Chicago. My career was on an upward trajectory, and I had just closed a major account that brought in significant revenue for the company. The celebration was in full swing when I noticed him across the room. Jason Taylor, tall with dark hair and striking blue eyes, was the new financial advisor who had just been hired. Our eyes met, and he smiled. That smile would eventually lead to both the happiest and most painful moments of my life. "You must be Rebecca," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard a lot about the marketing genius who landed the Patterson account." I blushed, not used to such direct compliments. "And you must be the new financial hotshot everyone's talking about." We spent the entire night talking, discovering we had so much in common. Both of us were ambitious, loved traveling, and shared the same vision for our futures. By the end of the night, he had my number, and by the end of the week, we had gone on 3 dates. Our relationship progressed quickly. Jason was everything I thought I wanted. Attentive, successful, and seemingly devoted to our relationship. Within 6 months, we were practically inseparable. Our friends joked that we were the power couple of our social circle. Madison, my best friend since college, was initially skeptical. "It's moving pretty fast, Becca," she said over brunch one Sunday. "Are you sure you really know him?" "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied confidently. Looking back, I should have listened to her concerns more carefully. When Jason proposed on our 1-year anniversary during a trip to Lake Michigan, I said yes without hesitation. We moved in together shortly after, finding a beautiful apartment overlooking the city. I loved our home, decorating every corner to reflect both our personalities. What I didn't realize was that I was doing most of the compromising. Our friend group expanded as we merged our social circles. Tyler and Amber, a couple we often double-dated with, became close friends. Katie and Brian, Jason's college friends, welcomed me warmly. We hosted dinner parties, went on weekend trips together, and created what I thought were lasting bonds. Last year, we set a wedding date for the following summer. I threw myself into planning, creating Pinterest boards and spreadsheets to organize every detail. Jason seemed happy to let me handle most of it, claiming he trusted my judgment completely. In hindsight, it was less about trust and more about indifference. 2 weeks before my 29th birthday, I discovered I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, and initially, I felt panicked. Jason and I had discussed having children, but always as something that would happen after the wedding, after his next promotion, after my project was completed. There was always an after with Jason. I sat on the bathroom floor, staring at the positive pregnancy test, my mind racing. Would Jason be happy? Would this accelerate our wedding plans? How would this affect my career? After the initial shock wore off, excitement began to grow. This was our baby, a perfect combination of both of us. I decided to wait to tell Jason, to make it special. My birthday party seemed like the perfect opportunity to share our news with him and our closest friends. In the days leading up to my birthday, I noticed subtle changes in Jason's behavior. He was staying later at work, being protective of his phone, and seeming distracted during our conversations. I chalked it up to stress at work. His financial firm was going through a restructuring, and he had mentioned potential layoffs. I didn't want to add to his stress, so I kept my pregnancy news to myself, growing more excited about my planned announcement. Amber helped me plan the birthday party, suggesting we host it at our apartment to make it more intimate. "It's going to be perfect," she assured me as we picked out decorations and planned the menu. "Everyone's excited to celebrate with you." Madison offered to handle the cake. 30 is a big one, she said, even though I was only turning 29. "We need something spectacular." If only she knew how spectacular the night would actually turn out to be, for all the wrong reasons. The morning of my birthday, Jason surprised me with breakfast in bed. He seemed nervous, which I interpreted as excitement for my birthday. He kissed me softly and said, "Tonight's going to be a night you'll never forget." He had no idea how right he was, but for entirely different reasons than I imagined. I spent the day getting ready, scheduling a manicure and hair appointment. I bought a new dress, a deep blue that made my eyes pop and still had enough room to hide my barely there baby bump. I practiced what I would say when I announced the pregnancy, imagining Jason's face lighting up with joy, our friends cheering, glasses of champagne raised in celebration. I had no idea that in a few hours, my entire world would come crashing down around me. By 7 o'clock, our apartment was transformed. Amber and Madison had outdone themselves with elegant decorations in silver and blue. Candles flickered throughout the space, casting a warm glow over everything. The dining table was laden with appetizers and drinks, and Madison's cake stood proudly in the center, a two-tiered masterpiece with "Happy Birthday, Rebecca" written in delicate frosting. Guests began arriving around 7:30. Tyler and Amber were first, followed by Katie and Brian. My coworkers Sarah and Daniel came bearing gifts and bottles of wine. Jason's colleagues Mark and Heather arrived shortly after. I noticed Jason stiffen slightly when they walked in, but I dismissed it as work tension. If only I had paid more attention to the way Heather's eyes lingered on Jason, or how he carefully avoided standing too close to her. Throughout the evening, I kept waiting for the perfect moment to make my announcement. I had planned to do it during the toast before cutting the cake. Jason seemed distracted, checking his phone frequently and making brief disappearances to take calls. Each time he returned, his expression grew more resolved, as if he was preparing himself for something. "Is everything okay?" I asked after he returned from one such disappearance. "Everything's fine," he replied, not quite meeting my eyes. "Just some work stuff. Tonight is about you." He squeezed my hand, but it felt perfunctory rather than affectionate. By 9 o'clock, everyone had arrived, and the party was in full swing. The apartment was filled with laughter and conversation. I felt a surge of gratitude looking around at our friends, our home, the life we had built together. In just a few minutes, I would share our joyous news. Madison approached me, champagne in hand. "Almost time for cake," she said with a smile. "Any special birthday wishes this year?" I placed my hand discreetly over my stomach. "I think all my wishes are already coming true," I replied cryptically. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jason's voice suddenly rang out over the crowd. Everyone quieted down, turning toward him. He stood in the center of the living room, looking handsome in his dark blue shirt that we had coincidentally matched. "I'd like to make a toast to the birthday girl." This wasn't part of the plan, but I smiled, thinking he was being spontaneous. My heart swelled with love for him as our friends gathered around. This would be perfect. He would toast me, and then I could share our news. "Rebecca," he continued, his voice strangely formal. "We've been together for 3 years now." He glanced around the room, making eye contact with our friends. "And there's something I need to say to you on your special day." My smile faltered slightly at his tone, but I maintained it, expecting this to lead to some romantic declaration. Jason walked over to the side table and picked up a small, elegantly wrapped box with a silver bow. My heart skipped a beat. Was this a special pre-wedding gift? "I wanted to give you this in front of everyone who matters to us," he said, handing me the box. Our friends murmured appreciatively, some exchanging knowing glances. I noticed Heather shift uncomfortably, her eyes fixed on Jason. With trembling fingers, I unwrapped the gift. Inside was a small velvet box. For a wild moment, I thought it might be new engagement rings, even though we already had those. I opened it slowly, expecting jewelry, but instead found a folded piece of paper. Confused, I unfolded it and began to read. "Rebecca, I'm leaving you. You're useless, and I deserve better. I've found someone who truly understands and supports me. Our relationship has been holding me back, and I can't pretend anymore. By the time you read this, I will have already moved my essential belongings out. Don't try to contact me. The words swam before my eyes. I read them again, certain there was some mistake, some cruel joke. I looked up at Jason, expecting him to laugh, to tell me it was a prank. Instead, his face was set in cold determination. I'm sorry it had to be this way, he said, his voice carrying across the now silent room. But you've been holding me back for too long. I need someone who supports my ambitions, not someone who's constantly competing with me. I stood frozen, the note clutched in my hand. Our friends looked between us in confusion and growing horror as they realized this wasn't a joke. Jason, what are you doing? Tyler stepped forward, his face contorted in disbelief. Jason ignored him, his eyes fixed on me. I've been seeing Heather for the past 6 months. She understands me in ways you never could. Gasps echoed around the room. Heather stepped forward, slipping her hand into Jason's. She couldn't quite meet anyone's eyes, but there was a triumphant curl to her lips. You've been planning this, I finally managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. You planned to humiliate me at my own birthday party. I wanted to be honest, Jason replied coldly. And I wanted witnesses so you couldn't twist things around like you always do. The cruelty of it stole my breath. Not only was he leaving me, but he had orchestrated this public humiliation, turning our friends into unwilling participants in my devastation. And worst of all, he had no idea I was carrying his child. We're leaving now, Jason announced, grabbing his jacket from the coat rack. Heather and I have a late dinner reservation to celebrate our new beginning. As they walked toward the door, Jason turned back one last time. Don't worry about the apartment. I'll have my lawyer contact you about dividing our assets. I've already taken what matters to me from our joint accounts. They left, the door closing behind them with a finality that echoed through the stunned silence. All eyes turned to me, watching, waiting for the breakdown that should logically follow such betrayal. Madison moved toward me, arms outstretched, tears in her eyes. But I didn't collapse. I didn't scream or cry. Instead, I carefully refolded the note, placed it back in the box, and looked around at our friends. A strange calm settled over me, born not of acceptance, but of something darker and more determined. I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it wasn't broken either. It was the smile of someone who had just realized they had nothing left to lose. Well, I said, my voice clear in the silent room. I guess the party's over. Rebecca, Amber started, her voice choked with emotion. I had no idea. We had no idea. Of course you didn't, I replied. Neither did I. But now we all know exactly who Jason Taylor really is. I picked up a glass of water since I couldn't drink champagne in my condition. Thank you all for coming. I think I'd like to be alone now. They didn't want to leave me, especially Madison and Amber. They offered to stay, to help clean up, to just sit with me. But I insisted, maintaining that eerie composure that worried them more than tears would have. As the last guest reluctantly departed, Madison hugged me tightly. Call me, she whispered fiercely. Anytime, day or night. Promise me. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak anymore. When the door finally closed behind her, leaving me alone in the apartment still decorated for celebration, I stood motionless in the center of the room. The cake sat untouched, mocking me with its cheerful message. Gifts piled on the side table. And inside me, a tiny life that Jason knew nothing about. I placed my hand protectively over my stomach and whispered, "It's just you and me now." Then, finally, the tears came. The morning after my birthday party, I woke up on the couch, still wearing my blue dress from the night before. For a brief, merciful moment, I didn't remember what had happened. Then it all came rushing back like a tidal wave. Jason's public betrayal, Heather's smug face, the pitying looks from our friends. And the note. Those cruel words that had shattered my world in front of everyone who mattered to me. I forced myself to get up and face the day. The apartment was still littered with evidence of the party, half-empty glasses, plates of barely touched food, decorations that now seemed to mock me. Madison had insisted on cleaning up before she left, but I had been too numb to let her do much. My first coherent thought was practical. I needed to check our finances. Jason's parting words about taking what mattered from our joint accounts sent a chill through me. I grabbed my laptop with shaking hands and logged into our bank accounts. My stomach dropped. Our joint savings account, which had contained nearly $50,000 for our wedding and future home, was empty. Transferred out the previous day to an account I didn't recognize. Our checking account was similarly drained, leaving just enough to avoid triggering an overdraft. My personal account, thankfully, remained untouched. Jason hadn't had access to that one. Anger began to replace the shock. This wasn't just a breakup or even a betrayal, this was calculated theft. I printed the bank statements, my marketing executive brain already documenting everything methodically. Next, I went through Jason's things, or what remained of them. As promised in his note, he had taken most of his important belongings. But in his haste, he'd left behind a drawer of miscellaneous items, old receipts, business cards, a few photos. Among them, I found hotel receipts dating back months, all for local Chicago hotels. He hadn't been traveling for work those nights. He'd been with Heather less than a mile from our home. I also found emails between them on an old tablet he'd forgotten to take. Messages that made it clear their affair had been going on for at least 8 months, not the 6 he'd claimed. Worse, they had been laughing about me, about how oblivious I was, how easy it was to fool career-obsessed Rebecca. But the most devastating discovery came when I found evidence that Jason had been actively sabotaging my career. Emails to clients questioning my competence. A draft of a letter to my boss suggesting I was taking credit for other people's work. Notes about accidentally deleting important presentations from our shared home computer. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. "Rebecca, I need to talk to you. It's important." We met at a quiet cafe 2 blocks from my apartment. Tyler looked like he hadn't slept, his usually cheerful face drawn and serious. "There's something you need to know," he said once we had our coffees. I ordered herbal tea, mindful of my pregnancy. "Jason has been talking about leaving you for months. He's been telling everyone you were controlling, that you were holding back his career." My hand tightened around my cup. "And people believed him?" Tyler looked down, ashamed. "Some did. Not those who really know you. But he was convincing, Becca. He'd come out with us guys, act like the victim. Looking back, it was all preparation for what he did yesterday." "Did you know about Heather?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "No, I swear. None of us knew about that. When she stepped forward last night." He shook his head. Brian nearly punched Jason right there. The betrayal cut deeper, knowing that while I had been planning our wedding, dreaming about our future child, Jason had been systematically turning our friends against me and emptying our bank accounts. The next day, I visited my doctor to check on the baby. Despite the emotional trauma, the pregnancy was progressing normally. Sitting in the exam room, hearing the tiny heartbeat for the first time, I made my decision. I would keep this baby, with or without Jason. This child deserved better than a father who could discard people so cruelly. "Everything looks healthy," Dr. Wilson assured me. "But I am concerned about your stress levels, Rebecca. Do you have support?" The question made me realize how isolated I had become. My parents lived in Seattle, and we weren't particularly close. Most of my friends were shared with Jason, and I wasn't sure where their loyalties would lie after his campaign against me. Then I thought of my sister, Samantha. We had drifted apart over the years, partly due to distance. She lived in Milwaukee, and partly due to Jason. He had never liked her outspoken nature, or the way she questioned his decisions. Looking back, I could see how he had subtly discouraged me from maintaining that relationship. That evening, I called her for the first time in nearly a year. "Becca?" She sounded surprised but pleased. "Is everything okay?" "No," I admitted, my voice cracking. "Everything's falling apart, Sam." I told her everything, the betrayal, the pregnancy, the financial situation. She listened without interrupting, and when I finished, her response was immediate. "Pack a bag. I'm coming to get you tomorrow. You're staying with me until we figure this out." 3 days later, I was settled into Samantha's spare bedroom in Milwaukee. The distance from Chicago gave me perspective and space to think clearly. Samantha, a lawyer specializing in family law, helped me understand my options. "He can't just take your money like that," she assured me, reviewing the bank statements. "And if he's been sabotaging your career, we can use that." While staying with Samantha, I received a text from Jason, our first communication since the party. "Hope you've moved your things out by now. I'll be coming by with Heather to collect the rest of my stuff this weekend." The casual cruelty of it, the assumption that I would just vacate our shared home on his command, ignited something in me. Samantha saw my expression change as I read the message. "What are you thinking?" she asked cautiously. "I'm thinking it's time to stop being the victim," I replied, a plan already forming. "I need to go back to Chicago." 2 days later, I was back in our apartment. My apartment, as I soon discovered when Samantha helped me review the lease that was actually in my name alone. I had a meeting scheduled with Natalie Peterson, a fierce divorce attorney Samantha had recommended. When Jason arrived that weekend, strolling in with a key and Heather trailing behind him, he found me sitting calmly at the dining table with a stack of documents before me. "What are you still doing here?" he demanded, clearly shocked to see me. I smiled, the same calm smile I had given him at the party. "I live here, Jason. According to our lease, which is in my name only. You, however, are trespassing." His face contorted with anger. "You know this was our place. I paid half the rent." "Yes, into my account, as a contribution with no legal standing. But we can discuss that along with the $50,000 you stole from our joint account." My lawyer is very interested in that conversation. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across his face. He hadn't expected resistance. He had expected to find me broken or gone. "You can't prove anything," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I pushed a folder across the table. "Actually, I can. Every email, every receipt, every piece of evidence of your affair and your attempts to sabotage my career." "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? I'm a marketing executive, Jason. Documentation is what I do." Heather, who had been standing awkwardly by the door, shifted uncomfortably. "Jason, what is she talking about?" I looked at her directly. "Did he tell you he emptied our accounts? That he's been planning this for months? That he actively tried to get me fired? Is that the man you're choosing?" The doubt in her eyes told me she was hearing at least some of this for the first time. Good. Let her see who she had really aligned herself with. Jason grabbed her arm. "Don't listen to her. She's lying, trying to make me look bad." "I don't need to make you look bad, Jason. You've done that all on your own." I stood up, one hand instinctively going to my stomach, a gesture that didn't go unnoticed by either of them. "You're pregnant." Heather gasped, her eyes widening. Jason's face paled. "Is it mine?" he asked, his voice suddenly uncertain. The question, so insulting and so typical of him, cemented my resolve. "Does it matter to you? You made your choice at my birthday party. Now I'm making mine." I walked to the door and opened it. "You can collect your things under my supervision. Touch anything that isn't explicitly yours, and I'll call the police for theft. And Jason? I want my key back." As they left an hour later, Jason, with boxes of his remaining belongings and a considerably less confident attitude, I felt something I hadn't expected: strength. The devastation was still there, the hurt still raw, but beneath it was a steely determination that would become my salvation. After the confrontation with Jason and Heather, I knew I needed a comprehensive plan. This wasn't just about emotional recovery anymore. It was about justice and reclaiming what was mine. I met with Natalie Peterson, the attorney Samantha had recommended, the following Monday morning. Natalie's office was sleek and minimalist, much like the woman herself. In her early 40s with sharp features and sharper intellect, she listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes in a leather-bound notebook. "Let me be clear," she said when I finished. "What he did, the financial theft, the career sabotage, the deliberate humiliation, none of it is acceptable. And fortunately for us, most of it isn't legal either." "What can we do?" I asked, leaning forward in my chair. "First, we document everything. Every email, every bank statement, every text message. Then we use that to build our case for financial restitution. She tapped her pen against her notebook. The fact that you're pregnant complicates things in some ways and simplifies them in others. Have you decided whether you'll be seeking child support? The question gave me pause. Part of me wanted nothing from Jason for our child, to sever all ties completely. But another part recognized that this baby deserved every advantage, including financial support from both parents. I'm not sure yet, I admitted. I don't want him in our lives, but I also don't want to deny my child anything they deserve. Natalie nodded understandingly. You don't have to decide right now. But know that his financial obligations to his child exist regardless of his relationship with you. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked methodically with Natalie to build our case. We discovered that because most of our major assets were in my name, the lease, my car, even our furniture, Jason had less legal claim than he thought. The joint bank accounts were trickier, but the sudden, large withdrawals without my knowledge were clearly problematic from a legal standpoint. While Natalie handled the legal aspects, I focused on protecting my career. I scheduled a meeting with my direct supervisor, Linda Martinson, a woman I had always respected for her straightforward approach. I need to be transparent with you, I began, seated across from her desk. I'm going through a difficult personal situation that may have professional implications. I explained about Jason's attempts to sabotage my work, showing her the emails I had discovered. I also disclosed my pregnancy, knowing that I needed to start planning for maternity leave. Linda's response surprised me. I had a feeling something was going on, she admitted. We received an anonymous email last month questioning your work on the Rosewood account. It didn't seem like your style to make those kinds of mistakes. My heart sank. What kind of mistakes? Data discrepancies, primarily. But our team double-checked everything and found your original numbers were correct. We assumed it was a technical glitch. She leaned forward. Was that him? I nodded, feeling sick at how far Jason had gone. I believe so. Well, he failed, Linda said firmly. Your work speaks for itself, Rebecca. And as for your pregnancy, congratulations. We'll work out a plan that supports both your career and your new family. The support from my workplace lifted an enormous weight. With my professional life secured, I turned my attention to our social circle. Madison had been checking in daily, bringing food and offering emotional support. Tyler and Amber had firmly positioned themselves on my side, disgusted by Jason's behavior. But other friends had been conspicuously silent. Katie and Brian, Jason's friends from college, had sent a brief text expressing shock but nothing more. Mark, Jason's colleague, had avoided me entirely. I decided to reach out to each of them individually, not to plead my case, but to understand where they stood. The conversations were revealing. Katie admitted that Jason had been painting me as controlling for months. But seeing what he did at your party, how he planned it all, it changed everything, Becca. We couldn't believe he would be so cruel. Mark was more hesitant, caught between professional loyalty to Jason and personal disgust at his actions. He's been different at work lately, he confided. More aggressive, taking credit for other people's ideas. I should have seen it sooner. With each conversation, I gathered more insight into Jason's true character and more allies for what was coming. I wasn't just building a legal case, I was reconstructing the truth that Jason had worked so hard to distort. My next step was to secure my financial future. With Natalie's guidance, I filed the necessary legal papers to recover the stolen funds. I also opened new accounts at a different bank, changed all my passwords, and placed a freeze on my credit to prevent any further financial interference. As my pregnancy progressed, entering the second trimester, I felt my energy returning. The morning sickness subsided, and with it came a clarity of purpose. I began attending prenatal yoga classes, meeting other expectant mothers, and building a new support network separate from my history with Jason. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting with Natalie, I received a call from an unexpected source, Jason's boss, Richard Keller. Rebecca, he said, his voice grave. I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Jason mentioned you two had separated, but I've just heard some concerning things from our HR department. My pulse quickened. What kind of things? Irregularities in some client accounts Jason was handling. Nothing definitive yet, but enough to warrant an investigation. Given your situation, I thought you should know. The implications were clear. Jason's ethical shortcuts weren't limited to our personal life. They extended to his professional conduct as well. This was information I could use. Thank you for telling me, Richard. I appreciate your discretion. After the call, I contacted Natalie immediately. We need to look into Jason's professional conduct, I explained. If he's been cutting corners at work, it strengthens our case about his character and financial behavior. Natalie agreed, and we added this new angle to our strategy. The pieces were falling into place, a comprehensive picture of Jason's true nature emerging from the shadows where he had hidden it for so long. By the end of the month, I had a detailed plan in place. Legal proceedings were underway to recover my stolen funds. My job was secure, with Linda even hinting at a potential promotion. I had maintained relationships with friends who had shown their loyalty and cut ties with those who hadn't. My pregnancy was progressing well, with a strong support system, including Samantha, who visited regularly from Milwaukee. Most importantly, I had regained my sense of self. The woman who had stood frozen with shock at her birthday party was gone, replaced by someone stronger, wiser, and absolutely determined to reclaim her life. I was ready for the next phase, executing my carefully crafted revenge. Not out of pettiness or spite, but out of a deep conviction that justice needed to be served. Jason had tried to destroy me publicly. Now he would face the consequences of his actions just as publicly. And the best part? He still had no idea what was coming. The first step in executing my plan was reclaiming my physical space. While Jason was on a business trip to New York, information I gleaned from Madison, who still occasionally heard office gossip from mutual acquaintances, I had the locks changed on the apartment. As the sole name on the lease, I was well within my legal rights to do so. I also hired a security company to install a basic system with cameras at the entrance and in the hallway outside my door. If Jason tried to force his way in or harass me, I would have evidence. Natalie had advised me to document everything, and I took that advice to heart. On the professional front, things were moving quickly. Linda called me into her office on a Wednesday morning, a rare smile on her usually stoic face. I have some news, she said, gesturing for me to sit. The executive team has been reviewing the department structure, and we're creating a new position, Senior Marketing Director. Given your performance and leadership on recent projects, we'd like to offer it to you. I sat there stunned, my hand unconsciously going to my growing baby bump. Are you serious? Even with my maternity leave coming up? Linda nodded firmly. Especially with that. We want to demonstrate our commitment to supporting working parents. The promotion comes with a significant salary increase and more flexible work arrangements, which we think will be beneficial as you navigate new motherhood. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Not only would this strengthen my financial position, but it also directly contradicted Jason's narrative about me being career-obsessed at the expense of relationships. I was excelling professionally while preparing for motherhood, proving that the two weren't mutually exclusive. I accepted the offer immediately, and news of my promotion spread quickly through the company. By the end of the day, I had received dozens of congratulatory emails and messages, including one from Mark, Jason's colleague. Heard about the promotion. Well deserved. Jason was wrong about a lot of things. I smiled at the message, knowing that word would eventually reach Jason. His attempts to sabotage my career had not only failed but backfired spectacularly. The legal proceedings were moving forward as well. Natalie had filed the necessary paperwork to recover the stolen funds, and our case was strong. The bank had provided documentation of the suspicious transfers, all made within days of my birthday party, clearly showing premeditation. We have a court date next month, Natalie informed me over the phone. And Jason's lawyer has already reached out about a potential settlement. He wants to settle? I asked, surprised. Jason had always been the type to fight rather than compromise. He does. I think reality is setting in. The evidence is overwhelmingly against him, and a public court battle would only further damage his reputation. I considered this. A settlement would be quicker and less stressful, especially given my pregnancy. But it would also be private, allowing Jason to avoid public accountability for his actions. What do you recommend? I asked. Normally, I'd say take the settlement. It's cleaner, faster, and you'd likely get most of what we're asking for, Natalie replied thoughtfully. But in this case, given the deliberate cruelty and public nature of his betrayal, you might find more satisfaction in seeing it through to court. I took a day to think about it, weighing the pros and cons. In the end, I decided to counter his settlement offer with terms that went beyond money. I wanted a formal admission of wrongdoing and a public apology. If he agreed to those terms, I would settle. If not, we would proceed to court. Meanwhile, Jason's professional life was beginning to unravel. The irregularities Richard Keller had mentioned had developed into a full investigation. Through Tyler, who had maintained some contact with Jason's coworkers, I learned that Jason was under scrutiny for potentially misleading clients about investment returns and possibly using insider information. I didn't directly involve myself in that situation. His professional misconduct was his own doing, but I made sure Natalie included evidence of his ethical lapses in our legal filings. Character matters in legal proceedings, after all. Then came the development I hadn't anticipated. Heather reached out to me directly. A text message, simple but loaded with implications. Can we talk? There are things you should know. We met at a quiet cafe far from both our workplaces. Heather looked different from the smugly triumphant woman who had stood beside Jason at my birthday party. She seemed smaller somehow, her confidence deflated. "I'm sorry," were her first words. "I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I am truly sorry for my role in hurting you." I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. I hadn't come for apologies. I had come for information. "Jason isn't who I thought he was," she continued, staring into her coffee cup. "The things he said about you, about your relationship. I believed him because I wanted to. But these past few weeks, I've seen the real Jason, and it's not pretty." "What happened?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "Everything's a game to him. He used me to hurt you, and now he's already looking elsewhere." I found messages on his phone. She looked up, her eyes haunted. "And the things he's been doing at work. I could lose my job just by association." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to know the truth. And because..." She hesitated, then pushed a USB drive across the table. "Because I have proof of what he's been doing. Emails, financial records, conversations where he talked about setting you up. It's all there." I looked at the small drive, then back at her. "Why would you help me now?" "Self-preservation. Partly," she admitted. "But also because what he did to you was wrong, and I was wrong to be part of it. This doesn't make us friends, but maybe it helps set something right." I took the drive, thanked her calmly, and left. Whatever her motivations, the information she provided was invaluable. Natalie's team verified its authenticity and incorporated the relevant documents into our case. With this new evidence, Jason's lawyer came back with a revised settlement offer that accepted all my terms, including the public apology. But by then, it was too late. The evidence of professional misconduct had made its way to regulatory authorities, and Jason was facing an investigation that went far beyond our personal dispute. 3 weeks later, I attended my baby shower, hosted by Madison and Amber in the same apartment where my birthday party had taken place. The contrast couldn't have been more striking. Surrounded by genuine friends and my sister Samantha, I felt a joy and security that had been missing from my relationship with Jason. During the celebration, I received a text from Tyler. "Thought you should know. Jason just got fired. The company's issuing a statement tomorrow." I shared the news with Samantha privately, and she squeezed my hand. "Karma," she said simply. The next day, the news broke publicly. Jason Taylor, promising financial advisor, had been terminated for ethical violations and misconduct. His professional reputation was in tatters, and according to Tyler, most of his friends had distanced themselves as well. Heather, having provided evidence against him, had managed to save her own job but was transferring to the company's Boston office for a fresh start. As for Jason himself, he had been trying to contact me with increasing desperation. Calls, texts, even an attempt to reach me through mutual friends. I maintained my silence, letting the legal proceedings speak for me. His final text read simply, "We need to talk about the baby. It's mine too." I showed the message to Natalie, who advised me on my rights regarding paternity and custody. "He does have legal rights as the father," she explained. "But given his behavior and the evidence we have, we can advocate for limited or supervised visitation if that's what you want." I thought about the kind of father Jason would be: unreliable, self-centered, manipulative. I thought about the kind of influence I wanted in my child's life. And I made my decision. "I want what's best for my baby," I told Natalie. "And that means a stable, loving environment without toxic influences. If he wants to be involved, he'll need to prove he's changed, and that will take more than words." By the end of the second month after my birthday party, my revenge had largely executed itself. I had recovered most of the stolen funds through legal means. My career was flourishing with my new promotion. I had a strong support network of true friends. My pregnancy was healthy and progressing well. Meanwhile, Jason had lost his job, his reputation, most of his friends, and his girlfriend. His financial situation was precarious, with legal fees mounting and potential regulatory fines on the horizon. Everything he had tried to take from me had instead been taken from him. But the final confrontation was yet to come, and it would happen in the most unexpected way. It was a rainy Tuesday night, exactly 2 months after my birthday party. I was curled up on my couch with a pregnancy book and a cup of herbal tea, enjoying the peaceful evening. My apartment had undergone a transformation in recent weeks. I had repainted the walls in soothing sage green, replaced the furniture Jason and I had chosen together with pieces that reflected my own taste, and created a cozy nursery in the spare bedroom. It felt like my space now, with no lingering shadows of my past relationship. The sound of my doorbell ringing startled me. It was nearly 11, far too late for visitors. I approached the intercom cautiously and pressed the button. "Who is it?" I asked. There was no verbal response, just the sound of irregular breathing. Then a slurred voice, "Rebecca, let me in. We need to talk." "Jason." And, from the sound of it, he was drunk. I didn't respond, instead checking the security camera feed on my phone. There he was, swaying slightly in the hallway, looking nothing like the polished financial advisor I had known. His shirt was rumpled, his hair disheveled, and he was leaning against the wall for support. "I know you're there," he continued, his voice rising. "This is my home too. Let me in." I called building security immediately, but also texted Tyler, who lived nearby. "Jason's at my door. Drunk. I've called security, but could use backup." Tyler's response was immediate, "On my way." 5 minutes. I watched on the camera as Jason's behavior escalated. He began pounding on the door, his voice growing louder. "Rebecca, open the door. You've ruined everything. The least you can do is talk to me." Mrs. Patel from across the hall poked her head out, then quickly retreated back inside. Moments later, the elevator doors opened, and our building security guard, Roberto, stepped out. "Sir, you need to leave," he said firmly. "You're disturbing the residents." "This is my apartment," Jason insisted, gesturing wildly. "My fiancé is in there." "Your name isn't on the lease, Mr. Taylor," Roberto replied calmly. "And Ms. Williams has requested that you not be allowed access to the building. Please leave before I have to call the police." Jason's face contorted with rage. "Call them. Go ahead. She stole everything from me. My job, my friends, my reputation. She's turned everyone against me." I watched this unfold with a strange detachment. This man, ranting and raving in the hallway, seemed like a stranger. It was hard to reconcile him with the Jason I had loved, had planned to marry, had believed would be the father of my child. The elevator doors opened again, and Tyler stepped out, immediately assessing the situation. "Jason," he said, his voice firm but not aggressive. "This isn't the way, man. You need to leave. Jason spun around, nearly losing his balance. Tyler? You too? She got to you too. Nobody got to me. I saw what you did. We all did. Tyler moved closer, positioning himself between Jason and my door. You're drunk. Let me call you a cab. I don't need a cab. I need to talk to Rebecca. Jason turned back to my door, his voice taking on a pleading tone. Rebecca, please. Everything's falling apart. I made a mistake. Something in me shifted. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about closure. I made a decision and opened the door, staying safely behind Tyler. Jason's eyes widened when he saw me, his gaze immediately going to my visibly pregnant belly. I was wearing a simple t-shirt that accentuated my now obvious pregnancy. You really are pregnant, he murmured, as if he had convinced himself it was a lie. Yes, I am, I replied calmly. And this is why you need to leave. This kind of behavior isn't good for me or the baby. But it's my baby too, he protested, taking a step forward only to be blocked by Tyler. Biologically, yes, I acknowledged. But in every way that matters, in every way that involves responsibility, care, and love, you've shown that you're not ready to be a father. That's not fair, he slurred. You didn't even give me a chance. You gave yourself a chance, Jason. You had 3 years with me. You knew who I was, what I valued, how I loved. And you chose to throw it away in the cruelest manner possible. His face crumpled. I was stupid. Heather was a mistake. She left me, you know. Everyone's left me. Actions have consequences, I said simply. Is that what this is about? Revenge? Making me pay? His voice took on an ugly edge. You got me fired. You turned my friends against me. You ruined my life. I shook my head. No, Jason. You ruined your own life. I simply stopped protecting you from the consequences of your actions. By telling lies about me? By making me look like the bad guy. I never lied, I said firmly. Everything I've said, everything I've presented in our legal proceedings has been documented truth. Emails you wrote. Bank transfers you made. Words you said in front of witnesses at my birthday party. Roberto shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, should I call the police now? I considered Jason, standing there swaying and pathetic. That depends on Mr. Taylor. Is he leaving voluntarily, or does he need assistance? Jason looked between us, seeming to finally register the reality of his situation. This isn't over, he muttered, but the fight was leaving him. That's my child. And you'll have the opportunity to prove yourself worthy of being in their life, I replied. Through legal channels, with proper visitation agreements, after you've demonstrated stability and responsibility. But not like this, Jason. Never like this. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and stumbled toward the elevator without another word. Tyler followed him to ensure he actually left the building. Roberto turned to me. I'll make sure he doesn't get back in. And I've documented this incident for your records, in case you need it for your restraining order. I thanked him and went back inside, my hands shaking slightly as I closed and locked the door. Tyler texted a few minutes later. He's in a cab. Heading home. You okay? I'm fine, I replied, and surprisingly, I meant it. Seeing Jason like that, diminished, desperate, destroyed by his own actions, had removed the last lingering power he held over me. I felt nothing for him now, not even anger. Just a calm resolve to move forward with my life and create something beautiful from the ruins he had left behind. The next morning, I received an email from Natalie. Jason's lawyer had contacted her, requesting a formal mediation session to discuss paternity rights and visitation. The tone of the request was respectful, professional, a stark contrast to Jason's behavior the night before. We can fight this, Natalie wrote. Given his conduct, we have grounds to request supervised visitation only, at least initially. I thought about it carefully. Despite everything, the child I was carrying did have Jason's DNA. Would it be right to keep them from knowing their biological father? Or would exposing them to Jason's toxic influence be the greater harm? In the end, I decided on a middle path. I would agree to mediation, but with strict conditions. Jason would need to complete anger management and parenting classes. He would need to demonstrate financial stability and sobriety. And initial visits would be supervised until he proved himself trustworthy. It's not about revenge anymore, I explained to Samantha when she questioned my decision. It's about doing what's right for my child in the long term. She nodded, understanding even if she didn't fully agree. Just promise me you'll protect yourself and that baby first. His rights come second. Always, I promised. 2 days later, I received a formal letter of apology from Jason, clearly drafted with legal assistance but signed by him. He acknowledged his betrayal, his financial misconduct, and his attempts to damage my reputation. He expressed regret for his behavior at my apartment and committed to respecting my boundaries going forward. It wasn't personal, and it certainly wasn't enough to erase the harm he had done. But it was a start, a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing that I could reference if needed in future legal proceedings. The confrontation with Jason marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I had stood my ground, maintained my dignity, and reclaimed my power. Whatever came next, I would face it on my terms, not his. And as I felt my baby kick inside me, a strong, determined little flutter, I knew that despite everything, the future held more promise than pain. 6 months after that rainy night confrontation with Jason, my life had transformed in ways I could never have imagined. The most significant change came on a warm summer morning when, after 14 hours of labor, I gave birth to my daughter, Emily Grace Williams. 7 pounds, 6 ounces of absolute perfection with 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and a determination that reminded me of myself. "She's beautiful, Becca," Madison whispered, the first friend to visit us in the hospital. "She looks just like you." I studied my daughter's face, searching for traces of Jason but finding mostly my own features reflected back. Her eyes, though, had his shape, the one genetic gift he had given her that I couldn't resent. Samantha had been my birth partner, staying by my side throughout the entire labor. Our relationship, once strained by distance and Jason's subtle interference, had blossomed into something stronger than ever before. She had temporarily relocated to Chicago to help during my final trimester and the first few months of Emily's life. "You did it," she said proudly, sitting at the edge of my hospital bed. "And not just the birth. Everything. You rebuilt your life from scratch, on your terms." She was right. In the months following Jason's drunken appearance at my door, I had methodically reconstructed every aspect of my life. Professionally, I had thrived in my new role as senior marketing director, completing several major projects before taking maternity leave. The company had been supportive beyond my expectations, even setting up a temporary nursery space for when I returned to work part-time after 4 months. Financially, the legal battle with Jason had concluded with a settlement largely in my favor. He had repaid the stolen funds plus interest and agreed to reasonable child support payments. The structure of the agreement protected me from having to interact with him directly. All communications went through our lawyers or a court-appointed liaison. Socially, I had discovered who my true friends were. Madison, Amber, and Tyler had remained steadfast, helping me prepare for Emily's arrival and forming the core of my support system. New friendships had developed as well, particularly with other expectant mothers from my prenatal yoga class and new parents in my building. As for Jason, he had followed through on the conditions we had established for visitation rights. He completed anger management and parenting classes, maintained sobriety, and secured a new job at a smaller firm in the suburbs. Our interactions were minimal and strictly related to Emily, conducted primarily through our legal representatives. The first supervised visitation occurred when Emily was 6 weeks old. I had been anxious about it, but the court-appointed supervisor was experienced and compassionate. Jason had appeared nervous but prepared, bringing appropriate gifts and asking reasonable questions about Emily's routine. It wasn't warm or familial, but it was civil and focused on Emily's well-being, which was all I could ask for. "He seems to be trying," the supervisor commented afterward. "But he has a long way to go." I agreed. People didn't change overnight, especially not someone with Jason's capacity for deception and cruelty. But for Emily's sake, I hoped his efforts were genuine. 3 months after Emily's birth, I returned to work part-time, balancing career and motherhood with the help of Samantha and a part-time nanny named Karen, a warm, grandmotherly woman who had raised 5 children of her own. The arrangement worked beautifully, allowing me to maintain my professional identity while still being present for Emily's major milestones. How do you do it all? Sarah, a colleague, asked one day after a particularly successful presentation. You make it look so easy. I laughed. It's not easy. Nothing worth doing ever is. But it's possible when you surround yourself with the right people and let go of the wrong ones. That was perhaps the most valuable lesson I had learned through the entire ordeal, the importance of having people in your life who lift you up rather than tear you down. Jason had systematically isolated me from those who truly cared about me and filled the void with his own manipulative presence. Never again would I allow someone to diminish me or separate me from my support network. When Emily was 6 months old, I organized a small gathering at my apartment. Not quite a party, but a celebration nonetheless. Madison, Amber, Tyler, Samantha, and a few new friends came together to mark not Emily's half-birthday, but my own personal milestone, 1 year since the birthday party that had changed everything. A toast, Madison proposed, raising her glass. To Rebecca, who turned the worst birthday ever into the best year of her life. And to Emily, Samantha added, who will grow up knowing her mother's strength. As we celebrated, I reflected on how different this gathering was from my last birthday. The same apartment, some of the same people, but an entirely different energy. There was no pretense here, no hidden agendas, just genuine connection and care. Later that evening, after everyone had left and Emily was asleep in her crib, I sat in the rocking chair in her nursery, thinking about the journey that had brought me here. The pain of Jason's betrayal had faded, replaced by gratitude for the lessons it had taught me and the strength it had revealed. I had learned that sometimes losing someone is the best thing that can happen to you. I had learned that rock bottom can be a foundation on which to build something better. I had learned that while you can't control how others treat you, you can control how you respond and who you allow to remain in your life. Most importantly, I had learned that happiness isn't found in perfect relationships or professional success, but in living authentically and surrounding yourself with people who value the real you. The next morning, I received an unexpected email from Heather, now settled in Boston. I saw your company announcement about the new campaign you're heading. Congratulations. I wanted you to know that what happened last year changed me too. I'm in therapy now, learning why I was willing to participate in hurting someone the way we hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness, but I thought you deserved to know that your strength had a ripple effect. You showed me a better way to be. I replied with a simple thank you. Not everyone gets to see the impact their choices have on others, and while Heather's role in my humiliation wasn't forgotten, her acknowledgement of it was meaningful. As Emily's first birthday approached, I found myself planning a small, joyful celebration, nothing elaborate, just a gathering of the people who had supported us throughout the year. Jason would have his own separate visitation time the day before, an arrangement that maintained boundaries while acknowledging his role in Emily's life. The contrast between this celebration and my last birthday couldn't be more stark. Last year, I had been eagerly planning to announce my pregnancy to a man who was secretly plotting to humiliate and abandon me. This year, I was celebrating my daughter's first year of life, surrounded by genuine love and support. The journey had been painful, the betrayal devastating. But standing on the other side, I wouldn't change a thing. Without Jason's cruel exit from my life, I might never have discovered my own resilience, rebuilt my relationship with my sister, or learned how to truly distinguish between authentic connections and toxic ones. Emily was growing into a happy, curious baby with a smile that could light up a room. I was thriving professionally, emotionally, and as a mother. The future stretched before us, full of possibilities unburdened by Jason's manipulative presence. As I put the finishing touches on Emily's birthday decorations, I realized that sometimes the worst moments of our lives lead to the best. Sometimes betrayal leads to freedom. Sometimes endings are really beginnings in disguise. And sometimes, When someone hands you a box containing the end of everything you thought you wanted, they're unwittingly giving you the first piece of something you actually need, the chance to rebuild on your own terms, creating a life that's authentically yours. If you've ever faced betrayal or felt like your world was collapsing, I hope my story gives you hope. The pain doesn't last forever, and what rises from the ashes can be more beautiful than what was lost. Share your own stories of resilience in the comments below. Have you ever had to rebuild after betrayal? What helped you find your strength? Like and subscribe for more stories of transformation, and remember, sometimes the people who are meant to walk out of your life are doing you the biggest favor you'll never thank them for. Thank you for listening, and may you find the strength within yourself to turn your own painful endings into powerful new beginnings.